awesome folks, welcome back to my channel. My name is Olivia. I hope you're all keeping well as we continue into the chaos of the world in a global pandemic. In all seriousness, I hope you and yours are well. Welcome to my May wrap-up. Where is this going? Where is all this time going? It's May. It doesn't feel like May. Although I have to say, here in the UK, you can probably see from the natural lighting I've got, it's a gorgeously sunny day. It's also very, very warm. Like I said, I am here to do my May wrap-up. I just discovered I've actually read a total of 12 books in May. Check me out. 12 books in May, and I've actually started a 13th and a 14th. What is going on? What is absolutely going on? I have read across the genres, I have read across the age groups, I have read some arcs this month. I know, I'm ahead of myself, I hope. And I just really want to share them with you. We're going to go from, I'm going to try something different this month. We're going to talk about the books that I read, how I read them in chronological order. There will be some mentions for the books that I read for the Mini Contemporary-a-thon Weekend Edition, but I go into more detail about those in my Contemporary-a-thon blog, which I think by the time this goes up you should also be uploaded, so I'll link that down below. And then right at the end of the blog, I am filming this on, what is the date today? Tuesday the 26th of May, so at the moment I'm kind of in progress on 2 books that I might get finished before the end of May, I might not, but we'll talk about those at the end. Okay, so let's start May wrap up. From the top, book number 1. Try and position this blooming camera. Right, I'm going to put book covers here. So first book I read in May was an absolute crashing success for me, and that was, I finally read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This tells us the story of Pip, a 6th form student, so that's the age group I actually work with, which was slightly freaky, and as she heads into 6th form, she has decided that for her EPQ, Extended Project Qualification, I suppose it's kind of like a lower level of a dissertation, just at 6th form level, she has decided to investigate this unsolved murder, or the unsolved disappearance and murder of a local girl who was at her school, and it was said that she was killed by someone who Pip knew, who was a decent, a friend of the family, also lived locally, but it has always, because it has always remained an unsolved case and an open case, because the guy who was claimed to have killed this girl actually killed himself before he admitted it. So she's always has questions over it, and it's so good. It's just, one of my favourite YA murder mysteries that I always talk about to everybody is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is up there with that for me, because you've got not only the kind of main plot line of Pip kind of working this out and kind of getting drawn deeper and deeper into the web of what happens in this case, you've also got, there's a slight element of mixed media that you see kind of pieces of evidence she's found, you see samples from her interviews she does, you see samples from reports she writes, and it's just magnificent. I didn't guess. I'm normally very good at murder mysteries. I didn't guess. But this was just sensational. I think I ended up with this one as a 4.5 stars. Thankfully, I timed my reading of this well, because my second book of this month was the sequel, and that was Good Girl, Bad Blood. This literally only released on about April 30th, and I think I started on the 2nd of May. And this is a follow-up. I can't say a lot about it, but it's the follow-up to the events of book 1. There is another murder mystery to be solved. Well, it's more a disappearance and a subsequent potential murder mystery that Pip kind of goes back into this world to get solving. There is the element of a podcast here, so if that's something that interests you. I have to say, the closing sequence I love the first one, but the closing sequence in this one was so intense. Kind of the moment of the reveal, which again I didn't get, was really intense and really dramatic, and I was just literally like, I was glued to it. I think this was a 1 o'clock another 1 o'clock in the morning finish, I want to say. And I was so invested, and I was so like, oh Jesus, what is going to happen here? And I think that's why that slightly tipped it ahead of book 1, because I gave this one 5 stars as well. So if you haven't gotten either of these books, particularly to my American friends, get on these. You're going to absolutely love it. And I think leading into book 3, I must have been in the murder mystery mood, because thanks to the wonderful Heather over at Bookables, her channel was the first place I saw this, I picked up and read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. Now, this is an adult murder mystery thriller, and from everything that Heather had said about it and all the vibes I got, it's very, if you've ever read or if you've ever seen the TV adaptation of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. So there's an island that there's only one way in, there's only one way out, there's only a certain number of people there, a murder happens, no one can get on the island, no one can leave the island, who done it, and it's just it was so good. It was fast-paced, it was quick. Essentially, you are at the wedding of a kind of magazine, online influencer and a well-known reality TV star, and you are told about what happens from several different points of view. So you get, I think at one point you get the bride, you get the groom, you get the bridesmaid. Who else do you get? You get the best man, and then you get the kind of the wedding plan of the person who's organising the event. Little bit ironic that my little sister's getting married this year, and one of the chapters is from the point of view of Olivia, the bridesmaid. Wasn't me. And it's so fast, and it's so quick, and it's so atmospheric. It is another one I always say about Children of Blood and Bone, that it has a cinematic quality. Lucy Foley's The Guest is exactly the same. I would pay to see this on the big screen. I could probably cast this for you as well, and no, I wouldn't put myself in. But it's so captivating, so thrilling, and just that was, I think I did Good Girl Bad Blood one night, and I think 2 nights later I was on Lucy Foley's The Guest List at something stupid like 1 o'clock in the morning, because I could not put it down. Highly recommend. You will be pleased to know that going forward in the month, I moved away from the kind of murder mystery serial killer vibe. My next read, I've gone from the serial killer murder mystery vibe to something that was so different and so wonderful and just played on every single one of my emotions. I cried a lot. And another one I finally read was Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. This has been sitting on my shelf calling to me for months and months and months, and I finally decided I need to pick this thing up. I am so glad I did. It's so good. It's so good. It's so emotional, and I related to so much of it. Darius is an Iranian American living with his parents in America, and constantly gets teased by bullies at school. He doesn't feel quite fit in. He openly identifies as an introvert. As the story goes on, you learn that Darius actually has depression and takes medication for it and kind of gets guidance from it, and actually that his dad has depression as well. So there's some fascinating family dynamics going on. When things aren't really just going wonderful in life at all for Darius, his mum, who is Iranian, the Iranian side of the family, gets a call from her parents that her father, so Darius's grandfather, isn't very well, and they need to go to Iran to visit. So Darius, who, even though he identifies as Iranian American, has been brought up completely in America, he's never been to Iran. So he goes with the family to experience this other side of his culture that he's never been to before. And it kind of opens his eyes to a completely different world, a magic different world. He learns, I loved the interactions he had with his grandmother and his grandfather. I loved seeing him learn about a culture that he didn't know, even though it's such a big part of him, because I learned so much from it as well. I know nothing about that kind of world and that culture, and I loved it. I have to say, I did listen to the audiobook for this, and I think that helped, because certainly the pronunciation of some kind of specific Iranian terms I wouldn't have got from if I just read it myself. There is also the most precious relationship, oh god, Aristotle and Dante. It's like Aristotle and Dante god tier relationship, that Darius makes friends with a local boy called Sarab, who kind of lives a few streets up from his grandfather and his grandmother, but he kind of comes and helps like with DIY and bits and pieces, and oh my god, they are so precious. They are so damn precious. I literally got emotional over them. Oh, and it was just, oh, they're so beautiful. But it really just is about a story about family, about being open, being honest, accepting who you are even if things you don't like certain things. None of us are perfect. I think for me, like I said, I listened to the audiobook, which I really recommend. I got so emotional reading this book. Darius and Sarab's relationship was so beautiful. The relationship he kind of had with, particularly his Darius's Iranian relatives, was amazing. Again, so beautiful. It was lovely to see him and his dad as well bond, kind of grow apart, grow together, grow apart, go together through the whole thing. And I think from the point of view of someone who has their own mental health issues, including, such as depression, I felt this was such a wonderful representation of dealing with depression in a day-to-day context, what it's like for people maybe who don't want to talk about it or don't feel they can talk about it, how it affects them in different ways. I thought it was just stunning. I will, and I can say this after one book, I would read anything Khadib Karam writes. And quite frankly, if anyone out there has an advanced copy of the sequel, Darius the Great Deserves Better, which is not at the end of August, I will sell my soul for that arc. And I've got a certain friend of mine who I recommended this book to, and I'll try. He was literally messaging me when he finished. He was like, Darius the Great is not okay, neither am I. And I went, oh, you loved it? He was like, oh my god. Between us, we would sell you both of our souls to get hold of that arc before August. I can't wait. It's so good. It's so good. I went into a period of couple of arcs, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back to those in a second. I want to talk to you about another two, so Darius the Great, 5 stars. I want to talk to you about another 2 novels I read this month that absolutely blew my mind. So I read a couple of arcs, but then I next read House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess, which I gave 4.5 stars to. This was sold to me as Game of Thrones, but everybody has a dragon. And I was like, sign me up, dragons. I heard dragons and I was there. And I know for some people this has been really hit and miss. I loved it. I was just like so enamoured. It is, just think this is Game of Thrones with dragons. This is so many I could see so many nods to different kind of fantasy stories and fantasy genres and fantasy tropes. Basically in this one, the start of the story, in this kind of world where there's 5 ruling families and every child from birth who are of certain class are kind of paired with a dragon from birth. It's kind of the importance of the human dragon relationship is very on par with humans and demons in Philip Pullman's Dark Materials. If you've seen that series, that's the kind of value and the kind of link. It's not necessarily that the dragon is part of their soul, but that kind of bond they have, that's the strength that kind of humans have with dragons. And so in this land you have the 5 ruling families who all have kind of different dragons as their kind of emblem. The emperor of the land has died and passed away, so every time that happens, the great all-seeing dragon in the sky, kind of an almost godlike figure, selects the 5 eldest children, one from each of the 5 ruling families, and they basically battle it out to decide the new emperor. It gets very Hunger Games style because the 5 that get chosen, they go and battle it out over so many rounds, and every time someone loses a round, whenever someone gets eliminated, they get cut, which is basically the loser gets killed in a way decided by the victor, and then their dragon's throat gets cut. It's very drastic. But this year it's a bit different because you go through the chapters. All the chapters are from the story of, I think there's 5 main characters. But this time it's different because it isn't the eldest of every family that gets picked. It's someone else. So you get the second eldest. You get the stable hand. You get the trainer. You get one where it's the second, which is the older sister's ready to go, but it's the younger sister that gets picked, and to save her from being killed, the older sister kills her younger sister and then goes instead. Oh, it's vicious! But just to see how their dynamics built, and how they just kind of changed and endeavoured. This is another one I'd put in a film. I would love to see this up on a big screen. Love it. I just loved it. There was I felt bonded to certain characters a lot more. The best character in this entire book is a dragon called Dog, and that's all I'm going to say. If you know, you know. I just loved it. I thought it was really fun. Really enjoyed it. 4.5 stars for that one. And then another sensational one I read, which I think I've also got sitting at 4.5 stars, was thankfully one of my most anticipated releases of the year, I loved it, and it was amazing. And that was The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. I got this edition in my March Alcrate box, and I've been dying to read it, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to read it. And essentially this tells the kind of story, mixing historical fiction with fantasy, about Mozart and his older sister Nannerl. What you learn is that Nannerl actually was just as talented, just as gifted as her younger brother, but because she's a girl, she could only kind of play for a certain amount of time and in secret until she got to marriageable age. When she realises that her brother potentially is going to usurp her in her awesomeness, she almost creates in her imagination a character called Hyacinth, who's kind of this mischievous pixie who lives in a world called the Kingdom of Back. And it's her way to escape kind of into a world where she's the most important and her brother isn't. But Hyacinth's not kind of what he seems, and there's a lot of issues caused. Her younger brother gets pulled into this world as well, and then there's drama and there's illness, and it's just, I just loved it. I have to say, sometimes when I read, I like to have music in the background, and on Spotify I have this like kind of instrumental classical music playlist that I listen to throughout listening to this, and I think that for me added to it, because obviously Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is one of the greatest classical composers ever to have walked this planet. To have classical music in the background, I think added to it, and particularly when you were also in the Kingdom of Back and these kind of magical scenes, it just kind of really, I got completely immersed in it. I don't know how much of it is historically accurate. Obviously, the Kingdom of Back isn't, I don't think, but kind of I learned things that I didn't know about kind of the Mozart children, and kind of what they had to go through, people they met during their time. This idea that apparently Wolfgang, when he was 4 or 5, played for, was it a French court? But he played for a court when he was 4 or 5, and he got congratulated by the king, and this girl had kind of been winking at him and smiling at him, and he was like, Your Majesty, if it's okay, when I'm old enough, I'm going to come back and marry her. But the her he was talking to apparently was Marie Antoinette. That's mad! It's my first Marie Lu book. It won't be my last. I still haven't read Warcross, so that's definitely going to be on my list, but I highly recommend this. I absolutely loved it, and don't you just love it when one of your most anticipated releases of the year comes good? Like I said, I also read 3 arcs this month, 3 short arcs, so I'm trying to get down my massive arc pile. The first one I read was a short graphic novel called Invisible Differences. This is by, let me get the pronunciation because it's a translation, Julie Dashes. It's on the bottom here if I haven't read it. But basically you have the main character Marguerite, who is 27, and throughout her entire life, up until current day, has struggled with kind of processing the world around her, and you don't really understand why to start with, but actually she finds out at some point, when directed to kind of correct sources, that she is on the autistic spectrum and particularly has Asperger's syndrome. And this kind of helps her start uncovering kind of the truths about her world, how she can access this world in a better way. And it's the most beautiful story, and what I loved about it the most is this element of the kind of representation. I know certainly I have one of my best friends, her son is autistic, doesn't have Asperger's, but it made me think about kind of him and the way he sees the world, and I just loved how informative it was, how positive it was, you know, because before she kind of got diagnosed, Marguerite was kind of like, well, why aren't you doing, people were like, well, why aren't you doing this, why are you doing that, you always cancel on us, well, what about this, and what about this, and what about this, and what about this, and having the concrete knowledge of a diagnosis empowered her to go and make more positive life choices, to do things for her. And the book starts in black and white and ends up in full colour, which it did in the arc. So to kind of bring that colour to her life, because she was doing it on her own terms. There was also at the back a fabulous kind of useful resources section to kind of learn more, which kind of made me immediately think, I need this in my library because my students would really appreciate this, and we do have some students who are autistic. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. When is it out? Says it's already out, but I think the English translation is coming out in either June or July. I'll try and find the exact date for you. The next one I read was a bit more of a hard-hitting punch of a one, but the game was a graphic novel. And let me just make sure I've got the full title of it. It was called Guantanamo Voices, True Accounts from the World's Most Infamous Prison. And this was by edited by Sarah Merck, with an introduction by Omar El Akkad, who is a former Guantanamo Bay prisoner. What Sarah Merck has done here, probably this one, it's probably best if I read you the synopsis to try and explain. An anthology of illustrated narratives about the prison and the lives it changed forever. In January 2002, the United States sent a group of Muslim men they suspected of terrorism to a prison in Guantanamo Bay. They were the first of roughly 780 prisoners who would be held there, and 40 inmates still remain. 18 years later, very few of them have ever been charged with a crime. In Guantanamo Voices, journalist Sarah Merck and her team of diverse, talented graphic novel artists tell the story of 10 people whose lives have been shaped and affected by the prison, including former prisoners, lawyers, social workers and service members. This collection of illustrated interviews explores the history of Guantanamo and the world post 9/11, presenting this complicated partisan issue through a new lens. That's what it was about, and you probably understand why this was a difficult read, because it's one of these things you see on the news but you never really know about. You know, people have a lot of strong opinions about it. People kind of, some agree, some don't agree, some aren't really sure, and to actually hear from it in the kind of way of people who have been there, and not just prisoners, which I liked that they had the people who worked on the site as well, was really eye-opening. It annoyed the hell out of me, in the same way that the TV show When They See Us annoyed the hell out of me, because it was just so wrong. But I thought it was very well written. The graphics, really stunning graphics. It was such a powerful piece, and I highly recommend it. I gave this 4.5 stars, and it will be going in my library when it gets published as well. The final one I finished was a very short poetry collection called Fat Girl Finishing School by Rachel Wiley. This is a reprint. I think it was originally out in 2014. It's just been reprinted with this new cover. There's a quote attached to this: "Fat girls of the world will find their voice through Wiley's brilliance, and we all ho for that." It's about living as a fat girl. It's about eating cake if you want to eat cake. It's about being body positive, being awesome, and it's so full of sass, and it's so full of wit, and it's so full of awesomeness. I was just like absolutely here for every single bit of it. It really is funny, and again, something else I try to do with my students is get them into more poetry. I think some of them will like this because they have that kind of sense of sass and wit and sense of humour. I gave this one, this was a 4-star for me, although those arcs, thank you to NetGalley and the publishers who sent me the e-arcs. Finally for this month, I have read 3 books. I read 3 books as part of the mini Contemporary-a-thon weekend edition, like I said, and that was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, which was smutty as hell and I was here for it. I read Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, which is another book that shook me to my absolute core, and I read All Our Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman. I talk about all those in much more detail in my vlog, so I'll link that down below. During that vlog, I also started my e-arc of Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is the companion to Get a Life, Chloe Brown. As of filming this, I am still reading that. I'm about 10 chapters in, so hopefully I'll be able to give you some more of that. It will either be the last book I finish in May or the first book I finish in June. I'm also going to be going on to read, like I said, Bone Crier's Moon by Catherine Purdy as a buddy read with Wheelie Stagey. We are starting that today, so I think that will definitely be a June start. But yeah, that's my May wrap up. What am I doing reading this month? 12 books read, and I've started another 2. Must be good. Quarantine is treating me good in some respects. Have you read any of these books? What have been your favourite books of May BookTube? I'd love to hear from you down below in the comments. If you enjoyed this video or you'd like to see more content from me, hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and then you'll hopefully get to see more content from me, and I'll get to hear more from you in the future. Always a pleasure to see you folks out there. Stay well, stay safe. This has been Stage Bookish. My name is Olivia, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye!